As we've been going through this month with the theme of living with intention, I started thinking a lot about the fact that Unitarian Universalism is, in its nature, a very intentional tradition. This is an intentional faith. We call it even a chosen faith. About 1 in 10 UUs, on average, are born into the tradition. 90% of us or so have chosen to be here intentionally. Most of us here in our congregation, even me, the minister, picked this particular religious tradition on purpose. We are here deliberately, of our own free will, because our personal values are Unitarian Universalist values. And our conception of what human community should be is what Unitarian Universalist covenants try to put into practice. Not just Unitarian Universalists, but faith communities of all types are not what they used to be. Congregations in general, across the whole spectrum of religion, are smaller, older, and less vital than they once were. Numbers over. The religiously unaffiliated are on equal footing with the largest denominations in America in terms of numbers, for the first time in history. One of the reasons Unitarian Universalist numbers have been in decline is actually the cause of one of our successes. Here in New England, many Unitarian Universalists are former Catholics. When I served congregations in Texas, many Unitarian Universalists were former Baptists. Unitarian Universalism has always been a place that people come into after coming out of somewhere else. Increasingly, people coming into Unitarian Universalism are not coming in from other religions as much as they are coming into Unitarian Universalism from having no religion at all, which is a fascinating development. We have had much success, and people don't come in as much as they used to because of this. Think about it. It used to be much, much, much harder to find a less homophobic and misogynistic faith community than it is today. It used to be that if you were an open-minded, forward-thinking, progressive person seeking a strong commitment to social justice, there really were not very many faith communities to choose from. It used to be that if you held unorthodox or fairly liberal views on religion, theology, and the Bible, and so on, there were not all that many options to choose from. And a lot of that's different now. 50 years ago, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, most Congregationalists, and all branches of Judaism did not ordain women. And although technically groups like the Methodists and the Baptists and the Congregationalists could, women in the pulpit were very, very hard to find. The Universalist Church ordained Olympia Brown in 1863. She later also served Unitarian congregations. And since 1999, women have outnumbered men in the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Even 30 years ago, gay Congregationalists or Lutherans or Episcopalians would probably not have been wanted or accepted in their home congregation. Today, by their own national policies, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the United Church of Christ, the Presbyterian Church USA, the Episcopal Church, Reconstructionist and Reformed Judaism, and even some congregations of conservative Judaism are LGBTQ welcoming places. Now, there are congregations among these that don't always agree or welcome, but these are large groups, and especially in the Northeast, are places where you can come out and or be who you are. There was a time when a Unitarian Universalist congregation might have been your only option. And even Unitarian Universalists didn't begin to really explore being welcoming congregations till well into the 1980s. Although Unitarian and Universalists were abolitionists and suffragists and activists in many areas of social concern, it really wasn't until the last 30 to 40 years, and in some cases much more recently, that environmental, economic, and racial justice has become a major concern of many American congregations. There are still many places that are theologically and socially intolerant. And yet chances are, for many Unitarian Universalists, the religion they left many years ago has liberalized substantially since they've been gone. Our congregations get far fewer religious refugees than we once did. And although it hasn't helped our numbers, in a sense, we won a theological battle on many fronts. And that being true, we don't get so many people fleeing the war zones of religion that we once did. We are intentionally pluralistic. We have no creed, so we welcome many forms of religious expression and thought and theology. We are not atheists. We do not require Unitarian Universalists to give up God or goddess. But if a Unitarian Universalist has God or goddess in their spiritual life, that's perfectly okay. We are not Christians. We do not require Unitarian Universalists to declare Jesus Christ their Lord and Savior. But if a Unitarian Universalist wants to follow the teachings and examples of Jesus, that's perfectly okay. We are not pagans. We don't require Unitarian Universalists to celebrate 8 Sabbats and call quarters. But if Unitarian Universalists want to have fire festivals and a home altar and belong to a full moon circle group, that's perfectly okay. We are not Jews. We don't require Jews to keep the Sabbath or get bar bat mitzvahed. But if Unitarian Universalists want to keep the high holy days and put a mezuzah on their door, that's perfectly okay. We are not Muslims. We don't require UUs to make the Shahada and affirm there is only one Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. But if a UU wanted to do that and practice the pillars of Islam and have a prayer rug, that's perfectly okay. We are not Buddhists. We don't require UUs to take the precepts or practice meditation. But if Unitarian Universalists want to do that, follow the Eightfold Path, belong to a Sangha, follow the teachings of Buddha, that's perfectly okay. And we are not humanists. We do not require Unitarian Universalists to affirm the Humanist Manifesto. But if a Unitarian Universalist supports the principles of humanism, that's perfectly okay. And even though technically we are not any of these things, not even humanists, we are Unitarian Universalists, we are intentionally humanistic and humanitarian. Whatever our approach to spirituality as a Unitarian Universalist, one thing we hold in common is that we approach it in a humanistic way. We uplift and celebrate being human. And we have an ethics that concentrates always on human welfare and the welfare of our planet and environment. We proclaim as our most central value, our prime principle, that everyone deserves dignity and respect. There is no such thing as a lesser person. That is such a simple thing to say, and it's incredibly profound. Unitarian Universalism is not a club for people who abhor religion. We are a religion. Born in 1963, but having roots that go back thousands of years to the earliest Christian traditions, and Christian traditions all branched off of Judaism. We intentionally combined the Universalist Church of America, a Christian tradition that openly acknowledged that Jesus was not the only path, just their path, and the American Unitarian Association, which by the early 1960s was basically a branch of religious American humanism, or humanism that still had rituals and sermons and hymns. We intentionally blended these traditions and created something brand new in 1963, Unitarian Universalism. We have intentionally created our own way of being religious over the years. We still have sermons, songs, rituals like chalice lighting, and sharing what's in our hearts with each other. We intentionally welcome everyone. And yet at the same time, we recognize that not everyone will be a good fit with Unitarian Universalism. So I encourage you to build and follow a spiritual path and practices and do it responsibly, for that is our way. We have no creed because we choose to be here, and there is no dogma we must affirm. We are held together in community, not by common beliefs, but by common promises we make to each other. We don't agree to think alike. We agree to love alike. What holds us together is a promise to stay at the table, even when things go wrong or are difficult, to practice healthy communication and healthy relationships, to work out differences openly and honestly and directly, and to celebrate each other as often and as much as possible. We intentionally create a community not of a shared creed, but of shared values. When the pandemic started, we asked you to create intentional community because we couldn't meet in person in a sanctuary. And we're practically back there now. And you all responded. You met online, had services online, met with me for lunch and book groups, took your meetings and your committees online, took your activism online, took your fundraising online. And we asked you to call and check in on each other to make sure you stayed connected, and you did. And you went an extra step and organized gatherings with each other outside or masked, even in the winter, driving through like a drive-through window for church to carve pumpkins and get corn muffins and cider and get valentines and chocolates. And we gathered outside in the summer. And then we bought land and celebrated it with a blessing together. We started in a way to reinvent how we were community out of necessity, because that's what we do. That's how we are a religious community. And we still need everyone's creativity and commitment to intentionally create community. We are not the pandemic yet. And we will be soon having yet another drive through Valentine's Day to celebrate that. And we need to think of more ways to keep our community connected and build it and help it thrive the way Moose has done over the last 40 plus years. So I ask you to be even more intentional about being Unitarian Universalists. Claim the tradition as your own. You are a member of a congregation and a regular participant in its community life. Your own personal practice may be humanist, but you're not attending a meeting of the American Humanist Association right now. You're attending Unitarian Universalist Congregation Moose. Your own practice may be Christian, but you're not attending a Christian church this Sunday. You're attending a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Your own identity or approach may be Jewish. Here every week, not in shul. Your own identity may be atheist, but you're in church every week with us. We are a strange faith community in many ways. But we are community above all, not what we believe above all about human spirit. And thus, we call Unitarian Universalism a living tradition because it lives and grows and changes as human beings and Unitarian Universalists live and grow and change. So lend your thoughts and practice to the tradition and to our congregation. Help us have a bit of your personal flavor and try out some of the other flavors you'll be exposed to. Intentionally, on your own, own your own religious stuff. So many Unitarian Universalists come out of other traditions, and for so long through human and religious history, those religions were not the most open-minded, forward-thinking places. And people have been hurt, even abused, by faith communities and faith leaders. And they bring that hurt with them to our congregations. And as the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. So one of the things we need to learn to intentionally do better and better and better always is learn to how to help people heal spiritual harm. We must be on guard against letting our own personal histories cause us to be intolerant of the spiritual approach of others. And we must be aware that we do have many flavors, and we must be certain we don't always use the same approach, language, or symbols, because there's a wide variety of us. Having so many spiritual flavors in our 6 sources of wisdom, we must each learn to be a translator. When another Unitarian Universalist uses religious language, you translate to your language or analogous concepts in the way you see things. We don't force other people to speak our language. It's our job to learn how to translate among us. We need you to help us figure out how to bring our idea of intentionally diverse community to others. We need, like never before, all of us to be involved and participate in crafting these services, informing our religious education programming for not just young people, but also for adults, because we never stop learning and growing. Not one of us is ever finished in terms of spiritual, emotional, and intellectual development, ever. And there's something about profound hope in that whenever our days are dark. There is something you personally can offer us out of the way you see things and experience them and think about them, to help us expand how we know and learn all those sources in our tradition. I am convinced that if humanity is to have a future worth having, its philosophy of religion will be very much like ours in Unitarian Universalism. Our tradition has always been on the forward-thinking vanguard of theology and culture and social issues. And we are, in a very real sense, a microcosm of our society at large. We are trying to build an intentionally, religiously, and otherwise diverse community that wants active participation from everyone. We don't set short goals. We tend to go for it all. And we are not free from human failings. We are no means we are perfect, no way. But we have always been a tradition that leads into the future. So be even more intentionally Unitarian Universalist. Light a chalice at home. Learn more about one of the flavors of our spirituality, of Unitarian Universalism that's not your primary focus. Tell others about who you are, what you believe, and your way of being Unitarian Universalist. Be intentional about it. In fact, you can tell others who aren't Unitarian Universalists about us. Be intentional about that. You could even use Milo's recess speech. Unitarian Universalism is an old religion that grew out of Christianity, which grew out of Judaism. Unitarian Universalists decide for ourselves what we believe about God or Jesus or life after death. And Unitarian Universalists believe we have a responsibility to make the world a better place. And that starts with treating people and our earth with love, kindness, and respect. I I think Milo is onto something. Thanks for watching this sermon. I'd really love to hear what you think about it, so leave a comment, and I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel and share it with others. Thanks a lot.